This is Jimmy. Jimmy has just graduated high school and has a whole lifetime of choices ahead of him. Like most intelligent boys of good character, Jimmy has elected to go to college. In addition to getting an education and the almost assured possibility of a rewarding career, Jimmy will be experiencing many new life challenges and choices. Yes, there will be temptations and dangers as well. Dangers like radical ideas, fast women, drugs, and possibly most insidious of all, alcohol. Yes, alcohol, the elixir of death. The brain-altering liquid responsible for more accidental deaths and pregnancies than Satan himself. Before you ingest any alcohol, you should know the facts.
What do I need to know about alcohol?
Alcohol affects the nervous system and the digestive system.
Additionally, alcohol can impede good sound judgment and cause memory loss. Alcohol cause lag in reaction time and make it unwise to operate vehicles or machinery. And drinking alcohol has been known to lead to illness and death. The choice is up to you. Sure, a good belt now and then gives you confidence and makes you feel good. For a little while. But the consequences could last a lifetime.
Hey, my name is Omid Harrison. What you're watching is a program entitled Tell Me Something I Don't Know. As you most likely know by now, this is a program about alcohol, the dangers of alcohol. Now, many of you might have seen or at least been exposed to awareness programs of a similar nature. I just want to start by saying, this is no easy task. Getting young people to heed warnings that extreme drinking habits have serious repercussions that could lead to death in far too many cases is almost an impossible task, or so it would seem. We don't want to lecture you with this program. I mean, believe me, it's hard trying to act as an authority figure on this subject, especially considering it can be said that the target age group for this program has a reputation for, well, challenging authority. What we hope to do is point out a few things that, well, you don't know or at least may not know, and show you an example of a situation where things can go very wrong. We'll also point out some very simple protocols that can be followed in those situations you may find yourself in if you or someone else is getting into trouble due to too much drinking. That's it. Oh yeah, except I will not necessarily preach abstinence within this program. But if you don't drink, great. You've made a decision that will help keep you safe and out of trouble, and that everyone should respect. But many young people do drink, and we all know that the law maintains that drinking alcoholic beverages under the age of 21 years is illegal. It is happening and has been that way through the years. The number of young people that drink regardless of the law has pretty much remained the same. So apparently, there's a limit to how effective preaching abstinence can be. What has changed is that extreme drinking is getting more extreme. We need to deal with that reality. We can only hope that some of what you're about to see may save some lives. Let's start with some statistics. Don't worry, this is interesting stuff. Alcohol use on U.S. college campuses alone is responsible yearly for 1,700 deaths. 400 of those deaths are a direct result of alcohol poisoning or overdose. People literally drank themselves to death. Let's see, 600,000 plus injuries, 11% of campus population had unwanted sexual contact, at least 1% had been raped, reported or unreported. Assaults and scrapes with the legal system averaged somewhere between 16 and 23%. As for those who drink, 44% of college students are considered binge drinkers. That means someone who drinks at least 5 drinks in a row, that's for males, 4 for females, on at least one occasion within 2 weeks. Now, why flag that amount of drinking as a problem? because that's the amount where people start getting themselves into trouble. Could be minor, such as neglect of schoolwork or altercations, or it could be more serious behavior that can lead to criminal charges and even death.
I think the three things that we tend to see in the emergency department related to alcohol for college students are the most serious being the people that come in coma. They just can't be aroused by their friends. The second are the sexual assault cases, and statistics will tell you that a third to half of sexual assaults that occur in young people are alcohol related. And then the third is trauma, that people fall down, not uncommonly fall out of windows, and you'd think, gee, that's a pretty rare circumstance. We see that. They fall off of balconies and have major trauma as well. In the summer, drowning. It's that impact of judgment, that alcohol affects judgment, and things that you wouldn't do when you're sober, you do when you've been drinking, and get yourself into trouble that may follow you, track you for the rest of your life in terms of a criminal record or some other, adverse outcome that's occurred to you. So if you're drinking more than 1 drink per hour for the average person, you are going to begin to build up a toxic level of alcohol in the body. 5 drinks rapidly for a male, 4 drinks for a female, so that's typically within the context of an hour or so, clearly will cause toxic levels of alcohol to build up in the system. And that's where you're going to start getting into trouble. Well, people are familiar with the fact that alcohol affects the brain. In fact, that's why most young people drink. It gets rid of the inhibitions. It makes you feel like you're the life of the party. It lets you get out there and have a good time. But with the effect of alcohol on that rational or thinking part of the brain, you may not recognize the signs and symptoms of having too much alcohol. You may dismiss it, and you may go on drinking, getting yourself into more trouble. But alcohol at toxic levels will begin to affect those parts of the brain that control breathing, blood pressure, so that your respiratory rate, your breathing rate goes down, your blood pressure may drop. And that reflex that we all have, the gag reflex, doctor sticks a wooden stick down your throat to take a look at your throat when it's sore, and you all gag. That's a common reflex, automatic, you don't think about it. That reflex is suppressed by alcohol. Alcohol has direct toxic effects on the heart. Heart's basically a muscle, squeezes obviously 60, 70, 80 times a minute throughout your life. And that muscle function, that ability to squeeze, that pump function, is adversely affected by alcohol. In the long term, people can get what's called a cardiomyopathy, real damage to the heart tissue. People take rape pretty seriously. And if you are a young man and you're now being accused of rape, and I'm not sure juries these days are all that sympathetic to the idea that, well, I had 1 too many drinks and so I was not able to make the right judgment. And in fact, a woman who has had too much to drink, while you can argue that she's somewhat contributing to having gotten into that situation, one can argue that she's not able to give consent. For a young man to say, well, the woman was agreeable. If the blood alcohol level is elevated, that doesn't constitute consent. And so you can certainly get hauled into court. For every case of alcohol poisoning that comes in, with coma or with really severe effects on the level of consciousness, we probably see 10, 15, or 20 that are sexual assault cases.
Alright, let's stop for a second and talk about that rather antiquated term, binge drinking. A study conducted by Dr. Henry Weschler, a public health researcher at the Harvard School of Public Health, led to the conclusion that a binge means 4 to 5 drinks in a session. What is interesting here is that Dr. Weschler's study that led to these conclusions was conducted back in 1999. Since then, the binge definition has rather pathetically become quite tame in relation to much of the party scene. Nowadays, we see behaviors such as pre-gaming and extreme drinking, wherein people slam down 5, 6, 7 shots just to start an evening of partying. I mean, this problem is so vast, studies are only just now starting to assess the ramifications. If Dr. Weschler's study concluded that having 5 drinks in a row within a 2-week window leads to destructive behavior, where does someone who pre-games more than once a week wind up? This is where we need to be very clear, and where things are starting to get out of hand. When you say the words session and even drinks, many individual interpretations come to mind. This is a problem, so let's be very clear on this. Now this is considered a drink. 12 ounces of beer. Now this is considered a drink. 4 to 5 ounces of wine. This is considered a drink. 1.5 ounces, 100 proof, 50% alcohol, hard liquor. This is not a drink. In fact, let's backtrack. Get the idea? Now you're going to hear about what happened to Scott Krueger, an 18-year-old freshman who attended MIT. As a result of what was supposed to be a fun fraternity activity, MIT paid $6 million to settle a claim by the Krueger family and revoked the diploma of one graduate who was a student at the time because of his role in the party, after he had completed his education. The party started as nothing much different from other parties. The organizers even made sure there were non-alcoholic drinks available, and the people at the party knew they didn't have to drink, and tried to make sure nothing went wrong. But one thing did go wrong. Scott Krueger died.
A young college freshman, Scott Krueger, comes to Boston, MIT, go to college. He's a strong guy, was a college or high school athlete, good shape, and like most college freshmen, he wants to have a good time while he's here at school, wants to fit in, wants to make new friends. So he joins a fraternity, and it's initiation time in the fraternity, and he's going to have a party. They're going to have a party there. That night, he goes to the party, and he's drinking. We know there's probably some beer, some punch that had alcohol in it, ultimately some rum that was consumed as well. And he's eating pizza, and as the evening goes forward, he's not feeling that well. He's getting groggy, maybe having some trouble walking. And his roommates or his fraternity mates put him down to rest. Needs to lie down, needs to rest. Common response, I think, of most people to that situation. And they feel like they've done their thing, you know, they'll let Scott sleep it off. And they even come back a little later, maybe 30, 40 minutes later, we're not sure of the exact time. But they've got a problem now. They can't arouse him, they can't wake him up. And in fact, Scott's blue. And he's blue because he's vomited in that interval, and because he's not able to protect his windpipe, he doesn't have that gag reflex, he now breathes that material from his stomach into his windpipe. He's obstructed his breathing, not getting any oxygen into his blood, and he turns blue. Well, they can't arouse him, can't wake him up, and they call 911. Paramedics arrive. And what do the paramedics find? Well, they can't arouse Scott either. They feel for a pulse in his neck. There's no pulse. His airway's blocked. He's not getting oxygen into his blood. His heart has stopped. And so they have to put a tube down his throat. They suck out pizza and other food material from his windpipe, and they put down this tube into his windpipe so they can breathe him and get oxygen into his lungs. And they take him off to the emergency department. We get Scott here in our emergency department at about 12 or 12:30 at night. He's in full cardiac arrest. We initiate resuscitation measures. We put large intravenous catheters in. We give very powerful medications, and we shock his heart. Now, fortunately for Scott at that point, he's young, he's basically healthy before all this happens, and his heart recovers. It does start beating again. And now we move him into the intensive care unit, which is where I became involved with his case. Scott now is stabilized, but we're very concerned about him. We're starting to get blood tests back. So we now had kidney damage, we had liver damage, we had heart damage, and an x-ray of his chest showed that he had pneumonia as well. So we have 4 major organ systems that have been damaged by this episode of alcohol intoxication or alcohol poisoning. It's 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday at the end of October, and I've got to be the one to wake up his parents and call them and tell them that their son is deathly ill, that he may die. They need to get here as quickly as possible. Later on in the afternoon now, on Saturday, the family is arriving. Scott has stabilized some. We do have a better blood pressure now. We're able to get off some of these medications, but Scott's not waking up. We now go into the second day, it's Sunday. Again, the basic organ functions are stable and to some degree improving slightly. We're hopeful. But I go in and examine Scott, and I shine a light into his eyes, and I see that the pupils are dilated. They're not responding. They don't constrict down. And this is telling me that the brain has swollen to the point that it goes in the only place it can go, which is down, through the one hole in the skull where the spinal cord attaches to the brain. And the brain is going down through that opening and squashing that part of the brain that controls all of the basic reflexes that we require to stay alive. Basically, Scott is going into brain death. And I now have to go out and tell the family that no matter what we do, that with all of the resources of modern medicine, Scott is going to die. And at that point, they wanted to just say their goodbyes. We removed much of the equipment from the room, and we let the family sit with him as we disconnected him from the ventilator. And about 20 minutes later, the heart stopped as well. From the beginning of the party on Friday, 72 hours later, Scott's dead. Within 6 weeks, he had gone from a vibrant, alive, young man with his future completely ahead of him, a bright future, to now being dead. And really a needless death, one that just didn't have to happen. And you look at him and I'm thinking, this could be my son.
I can't even imagine what that must have been like as a parent.
It's terrible. It's the most horrendous experience you could go through. It's unbelievable to stand there and watch your beautiful kid die. Your beautiful, brilliant son.
18-year-old Scott Krueger was dead just 3 months after his high school graduation and only weeks after arriving at MIT.
Okay, the facts have been presented and you've seen what can happen. 3 people at this party, nicknamed Animal House Night, were sued. 4 people who were not even at the party were also sued, basically because they knew about it and didn't stop it. One of the claims against the people sued was that they knew Scott needed help and they didn't provide help. Another claim was that some people tried to help but didn't do it fast enough or well enough. So it is within the realm of possibility to be liable if you're at the party or not, and if you tried to help or turn your back and did nothing. The point is, when alcohol is involved and you're involved at all, there's no safe place to be or safe way to act. The lawsuit sought millions of dollars for the damages the Krueger family suffered. The students sued didn't have the money, of course, but a judgment entered by a court against you is good in most states for 20 or 30 years. So any money those students made, anything they bought, owned, or even got as a gift for 20 or 30 years could be taken to try to pay that judgment. Think insurance will take care of you? Think again. The insurance purchased by the students through their fraternity doesn't provide coverage for criminal acts, like providing alcohol to minors, so there's no coverage there. If none of these images, facts, or circumstances makes an impression on you, then please pay attention to this simple request. If there's a situation you find yourself in, and you or someone else you know, or don't know for that matter, is showing one or all of these 6 signs of alcohol poisoning, then they are in trouble. They have been poisoned. They need help. This is not an overstatement, and I'm not being dramatic. This is where most injury and death occurs. This is why we've made 2 versions of this program. And the most and best thing you can do is get that person to a hospital or call for an ambulance. The very least is watch them and make sure they continue to stay safe, continue to breathe, to live. The worst you can do is let them sleep it off. If nothing gets through to you except this plea, then we will have saved lives this past half hour.
That's all we want. We don't want somebody else to go through this. These people that are sending their kids to college should check things out so they don't become the exception, which they claim Scott was.
I'm still in such disbelief that this could happen.
Even now.
Still waiting to wake up from a bad dream. Well, you still are.
Please, watch out for each other. Watch out for yourself and make sure you have a support system to do just that. You don't want to know the feeling of dealing with friends or family members who are looking to you to explain why their son, daughter, or someone close is dead. You don't want someone to tell your friends and family the same about you. Think.